In North Korea, there's a rule: when you betray the supreme leader, 3 generations of your family are erased. Not imprisoned, erased. So when word got out that I'd defected, Pyongyang didn't just panic, they lost their minds. Emergency broadcasts, international statements claiming I'd been kidnapped by southern puppets. The whole propaganda machine went into overdrive. Why? Because I wasn't just anyone. I was Ri Ejin, the face of state television for 7 years. The voice millions heard every night at 8 p.m. The woman they called the people's flower. And I didn't just slip away quietly in the night. I destroyed their carefully crafted illusion in broad daylight, in front of international cameras. Steps from the South Korean embassy in New York City. This is the story they don't want told. This is my story. I grew up in Kangsong, a coal mining town about 40 miles outside Pyongyang. If you've never heard of it, that's intentional. These places don't exist on official maps. They're dumping grounds for families the regime doesn't trust. My father's grandfather had fled to South Korea during the war. That single decision, made before my father was even born, marked our entire family as hostile class, politically contaminated, unreliable. We lived in a crumbling 2-room concrete box. No heating, no running water. In winter, when temperatures dropped to -20 Celsius, we burned whatever we could find: old shoes, plastic bottles, textbooks. My father worked brutal 16-hour shifts down in the mines. Every morning before sunrise, I'd watch him disappear into that black hole in the ground. Some days, men didn't come back out. Cave-ins were routine. The state would call them martyrs, who sacrificed for the fatherland, hand the families a certificate, and that was it. 3 days of extra rice rations if you were lucky. I was 10 when my father didn't come home. Tunnel collapse, they said. Instant death, they said. We got the certificate. My mother held it and cried silently because crying too loudly could be interpreted as criticizing the state's safety standards. After that, everything got worse. My mother found work at a textile factory. But her rations were cut because we were now an incomplete revolutionary household. That's what they called families without men. My little brother Daniel was only 6. Every night he'd ask when Dad was coming back. I never told him the truth. How could I? Then came what the government officially called the arduous March, the famine years of the mid-90s. But there was nothing arduous about watching people starve to death in the streets. We survived on wild grass, tree bark, whatever we could steal or barter. I learned to trap rats in the alley behind our building. Let me tell you, roasted rat doesn't taste like chicken. It tastes like desperation and shame. I was 13 when I found my mother collapsed on our kitchen floor. Half-peeled potato still in her hand. The clinic said acute malnutrition and exhaustion. She died that night, squeezing my hand, whispering, "Take care of Daniel. Promise me." I promised. Suddenly Daniel and I were orphans with no relatives. Both sides of our family had been purged or scattered years earlier. The neighborhood party secretary suggested we go to a state orphanage. I knew what that meant. Those places were death camps with prettier names. Kids died from disease, abuse, starvation. I had to find another way. That's when I remembered something my mother once told me: if you have a talent the state wants, they'll feed you. The Pyongyang Arts Academy, an elite school that trained performers for state propaganda, held auditions once a year. I could sing. My mother had taught me traditional Korean folk songs before she died. So I decided to try. The audition was held in a freezing gymnasium in central Pyongyang. Hundreds of girls lined up, most from powerful party families with connections. I wore my only dress, patched and threadbare. Daniel sat in the back row, watching with these huge, hopeful eyes. When they called my name, I walked to the center of the floor and sang a revolutionary anthem about loyalty to the supreme leader. My voice cracked at first. I was terrified. But then I thought about Daniel, about the promise I'd made my mother, and I sang like our lives depended on it. Because they did. 3 stone-faced judges sat at a table in their military uniforms. When I finished, there was this awful silence. Then one of them, a woman with these sharp, calculating eyes, said, "Tone needs work. Posture is weak, but your emotional delivery is acceptable." 2 weeks later, the letter came. I'd been accepted. The academy wasn't a school, it was a factory. A factory that mass-produced perfect propaganda machines. We woke at 5 a.m. every single day. Physical training, vocal drills, ideology classes, performance rehearsals. Everything was designed around one goal: serving the party, glorifying the supreme leader. Demonizing the American imperialists and their South Korean puppets. Show weakness, you got punished. Question anything, you disappeared. But we were fed real rice, not sawdust mixed with grain. Sometimes actual meat. After years of eating grass and bark and rats, that alone made it worthwhile. Daniel got placed in a state boarding school, a privilege because of my new status. I saw him once a month. Each time, he looked healthier, happier. That made everything bearable. I trained for 3 brutal years. Singing, dancing, public speaking, broadcast journalism. They taught us how to smile without feeling anything, how to read scripts with manufactured enthusiasm, how to embody the party's will without thinking. By 16, I was performing at major state events. By 18, I was auditioning for Korean Central Television. By 19, I became the youngest primetime news anchor in North Korean history. I had become exactly what they wanted. But here's the thing about flowers in North Korea: they don't bloom free. They bloom in chains. Being famous in North Korea isn't like being famous anywhere else. You don't get freedom. You get a prettier cage with better locks. I lived in a state-assigned apartment that was bugged from floor to ceiling. Every phone call recorded. Every movement tracked. Every friend I made either turned out to be an informant or mysteriously vanished without explanation. And then there were the requests. High-ranking party officials started inviting me to private dinners. At first, I thought it was networking, professional relationship building. Then I understood what they really wanted. These men saw me as property, a trophy, something they were entitled to because of their rank. Refusing wasn't an option, not if I wanted Daniel to stay safe. Vice Minister Choi made it crystal clear one night: your brother's scholarship continuation depends entirely on your cooperation. This was my life. Glamorous on camera, suffocating behind closed doors. Every night I read scripts, celebrating the greatness of our system while living in constant fear. I smiled for millions while slowly dying inside. Then one Tuesday morning, 2 men in plain clothes walked into the studio during rehearsal. State security. Everyone froze. Ri Ejin, come with us. Now. They took me to an unmarked gray building and showed me photographs. Daniel, walking to class, eating lunch, talking with friends. Every moment of his day captured and catalogued. Your brother's doing very well, one agent said coldly. It would be tragic if something happened to him. They knew. Somehow they knew I'd been wavering, that I'd been quietly questioning things in my head. Maybe I'd hesitated a fraction too long reading a script. Maybe my smile hadn't been quite enthusiastic enough at some party event. In a total surveillance state, the smallest deviation gets noticed. Vice Minister Choi is very disappointed in your recent attitude. The other agent continued. He's been an excellent patron to you. You need to show more appreciation. You have a simple choice, the first agent said flatly. Continue serving the party with proper enthusiasm, or we reassign your brother to a rural labor camp for re-education. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. I nodded, went back to the studio, and read that night's broadcast with a flawless smile plastered across my face. But inside, something fundamental had broken. I couldn't do this anymore. Not even for Daniel's safety. That night, I made a decision.